I'm Candice, I'm alcoholic. At the beginning of the week, my head was in a space where I didn't want to share. I don't want to share. It was a hectic week, and my mind was plotting to phone up Wendy and be like, listen, I can't share this weekend. Can we move it? But I didn't. It was just thinking at the end of the day, and it's mad. Because my programs taught me to walk through the fear of sharing, especially the real stuff. And I'm going to start, obviously, a little bit on my past. I don't want to go too much into it. I say that every year, but I always share too much on my past. I say that because so much has happened in the past 6 years compared to the first 22 years of my life before I came into recovery. I'm 28 now, and when I was born into a relatively functional home. My dad went into treatment when I was 2 years old. I didn't find that out until I went into my first treatment center at 18. My mom doesn't drink. My dad didn't drink. There was a bar in our house with all the best alcohol, just there. And I didn't experience, drunkenness or people drinking in my life when I was growing up. And I have an older sister and I have a younger brother, so I was slap bam in the middle. And I suffered from middle child syndrome most of my life. It does still come back every now and again. But that's just, my mad thinking. I wasn't close with my sister and I wasn't close with my brother because I'd isolated myself into thinking I'm different. My experience through school was I wanted everybody to like me, and I needed everybody to like me, should I say, because the approval of others was so much more important than the approval from myself. So what other people thought of me was a massive part of how I acted. But at home, behind closed doors, I was a nightmare. I was the one that always got hidings. My sister and I used to fight a lot, and I was always the naughty one. My parents were always shouting at me. My dad would give me many hidings, and I deserved them, every single one. And I always used to be resentful because my brother's 6 years younger than me, and I was like, he never got a hiding. I was always the one. I was the victim. I was always the one that was getting in trouble, and what about everybody else? Always looking at other people's stuff, or never looking at who I am and how I was behaving. So my behavioral pattern started from young. I remember when my uncle was living with us. I don't remember much from my childhood. I only remember pinnacle things of what I did, the naughty things. Where I started stealing. He had this drawer full of coins. And I used to steal the money. I'd go in there when he wasn't there, and I'd take the money so I could go and use it at tuck shop. And I really thought he'd never know. And the more I'd go to that drawer, every time it would be like, okay, I'll just take a little bit more this time. So it really progressed over the years. And I was never caught out for that. Silly little things. I'd go into my sister's room and use her stuff without asking, because I felt that she had better things than I did, and I was always, and my parents never loved me as much as they did, which was complete delusional thinking. So I'd made myself special and different. And it reiterated itself by them saying to me, Candice, you're adopted. You're not part of this family. And so what I did is I found my best friend. She's still my friend today. It's the only real friend from active that's stuck by me through all my insane choices, even in recovery. We've been friends for 18 years, and she was a big part of my journey, and she's a big part of my amends. And once her and I became friends, every time someone would come into our friendship circle, I'd get extremely jealous. And I didn't like it because I wanted her to be my friend and my friend alone. And that's not how life works. I've learned that in recovery. You can't just have one friend. And I've gone through quite a few experiences where I've behaved that way. So I didn't like school. I got teased at school, so it was even more justification to sit in self-pity. I was a huge self-pity victim by the time I ended up in treatment on the hill. And my disease loved that, because then if I told you my story of what I thought it was, I wanted you to feel sorry for me and go, oh, I'm sorry, that's such a hard life. And meanwhile, it wasn't. I really did not have a bad childhood at all. My dad worked a lot. My mom is amazing. I didn't think so, because all she was trying to do was give me the best life possible and give me the best advice during it all. But I know best, and I went against absolutely everything that she's ever. So Candice, example, I don't think I did it, but it's said often in the rooms, touching this hot stove. I'd go out and I'd do it. And when I had my first, not my first drink, but when I got my first blackout, I want to say I was 13, 14, and I was with my best friend in Cape Town, and my behavior was there already with men. We were on the beach and we were drinking, and she was kissing some other guy, and then later on it ends up I'm walking off with that guy down the beach. Because that's the type of friend I am. I don't think of, respect of other people. If I liked something, I'd go out and I'd get it. And it didn't matter who I hurt. And I got really drunk, and I disappeared with this guy. And when I came back, she was gone, and they were all stressed about me. So I thought, okay, let me walk up the road to the house. And walking up that hill, my friend was on the side of the road, and she was crying her eyes out. And I was like, why are you crying? She's like, I had no idea where you were, Candice. And I thought something had happened to you, and you really scared me. But that time, I think her parents were on the beach looking for me, and they just walked back, and I got the cuck out that I needed. And that was just the start of everything, of my behavior with men and alcohol. We got really sick that night, and we came back home, and she was angry with me, but I didn't care. I carried on behaving how I wanted to behave. I didn't listen. I was always a person where the teacher would be like, Candice, if only you would apply yourself, you'd do so well. And I only realized that in recovery when I started studying again, when I actually applied myself. I did really well. But I didn't do that at school. Matric, I just passed. I don't even know how I just passed, because I was taking drugs by then. This whole time, I pushed my family aside. They weren't my family. I had no interest in building relationships with them. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know. I say that because I didn't know my mom's story. I'd heard bits and pieces of my dad's story, but I was so self-involved in what I wanted out of life and what I thought I needed. And life was one big party. And if you stopped me from having that party, I'd do everything in my power to push you away and hurt you. From the age of 15, I was in a relationship consistently until I went up into the house on the hill. So I'd never not been or received attention from a man. And I fixed off that, when even in my last relationship, if he wasn't giving me the attention I needed, I went out and I cheated on him. constantly looking for something outside of myself to make me feel better. But yet I'd go home and I would be in a drunken high state and blame him and deflect and say he's cheating on me and all that mad stuff. So after school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but it was suggested that I go in and study beauty, so I did. I wanted a gap year, not to go travel, not to go anything, but just to party, because everybody was doing it. Why wasn't I allowed that opportunity? And my parents said no, so I went and I started studying. And I didn't apply myself properly, and I met, I want to say, the sickest relationship I was in. Started when I was 18, and he was my everything. He was a drug dealer, and I loved that because then I had access to drugs, and I could drink more if I was drugging. A couple months into, this is huge, okay, the first 2 weeks we were together, my parents were away in France, and my sister was looking after us because she was responsible. She was very responsible, and they flew back because of my behavior from France. They made their trip short because of how I was behaving. And I moved out of the house and I moved in because they were putting down boundaries and trying to help me, but I didn't want to know about it. I wanted to live a life of how I wanted to live it, and it involved no responsibility about money. I just expected my parents to pay for everything, including my studies, and to bail me out when I was in the shit. They were there to be my bank. And I moved out of home, and I was so obsessed with this relationship. I packed up his whole house. And while he sat watching, I packed up his whole house, and that we were together about a month. And we moved in together into another place. He was running away from other dealers. His life was being threatened. And you would think that I would notice that something's wrong and I shouldn't be in this relationship because it's dodgy. But no, I loved it. I loved the dodgy people I hung around with because I was just as dodgy. I always remember my one friend I used to sit and use with, the one that introduced me to my ex. She used to super glue her teeth back in. And her house was, the garage door. I opened up the one day and there was paper stacked up to the door about here. And I loved being with this chick, and I wanted what she had because she had the life of drugging and drinking and, not working and just partying. And when she told me about my ex, she's like, Candice, I've got the perfect guy for you. Because that's what I attracted. And we were together a couple of months, and I was in college, and he'd come and he'd pick me up, and I'd go and I'd use, and then he'd drop me off. I didn't have a license. I was not, I had no inclination of getting a license because why? Everybody else can do everything for me. And a couple of months after that, I fell pregnant. And when I found out I was pregnant, I told my ex, and he was like, we can't have this baby. You cannot have this baby. And he's like, you need to go for an abortion. So I did. I told my mom I was pregnant, and she paid for everything. She took me to the place. Sorry. I'm not crying because of how I felt, but I'm crying because of what I put my mother through. I made her not tell my dad. I made her keep a secret. And it was massive, I only see it now, how I held people hostage with my shit. Doing things that aren't necessarily right, and bringing people down with me to the same level. And he broke up with me that day after. I was at his house, because by then I was moving back to my mom because I was using a lot and going back just for breaks. I just needed to be with the family a little bit and try, I don't know what I was trying to do. But he broke up with me while I was drinking at his house, and by then my mom had already started sending me to psychologists, and they put me onto medication. And I even got put onto those little things that read your brain. It was complete mad because there was something wrong with my brain, with the chemical balance, and there is. And the only thing I got out of all those years of going to psychologists is that water balances your alpha and your beta. Not that I ever drank water, I don't like water. But when he broke up with me, it was like the world had ended, and I didn't want to be around anymore, and I was like, this shit. It was all about me. And I downed a bottle of vodka and took a bunch of tablets, and he couldn't handle me. He couldn't handle my behavior, which I thought I wasn't. In my delusional state, I was fine. But I was mad as they come, screaming and performing and going off my head. So he dropped me outside my mother's house and drove away. And I walked straight into the bathroom, and I broke a razor, and I'd already been cutting, but I cut really deep. And as I did that, one of my friends from college had arrived at the house, and she opened up the bathroom, and she was like, "Oh my God, Candice." And my mom came. They rushed me off to Olivedale Clinic. I'm from Joburg. And the doctor there said, "I'm not sending her home. She can't go home. After stitching me up." And he's like, "You can't go home." And all I wanted to know was, "Mommy, please phone Toby. Please get hold of him." I needed that fix of affirmation. And she was like, "No." And it's funny how God works, because that exact situation happened to me in recovery when I went to go help a friend who did the exact same thing. And I saw what I did to my mother, again. My mom was the biggest victim of my doings, because I'd grab onto her and suck the life out of her. Sure, time flies. So anyways, I went to my first treatment center. I didn't go to any suggested little meetings or little groups for depression. I just got put onto stronger medication. I sat in the art room for 2 weeks. I smuggled in drugs and used drugs on the premises. I got one of my friends to bring in for me. And when one of my friends found out about me smuggling drugs in, she told my mother. And I hated her for that. I was like, "Who the hell do you think you are telling my mother what I'm doing?" I had this arrogant sense of what I need to be doing. So I got out. I didn't stay the full time. I managed to manipulate my way out, and moved straight back in with him. He didn't come to visit me. Everybody else came to visit me, but he didn't come, and I harped on that. And as soon as I got out, we got back together, and a couple months later I fell pregnant with Chloe. And I fell pregnant because I'm irresponsible, taking drugs. on the pill and skipping days in between. I felt pregnant because I'm irresponsible. But when I found out I was pregnant again, I wasn't going to go through another abortion. So I decided to keep Chloe. And by then I was starting to realize my life is not okay. What I'm doing is not okay. And I'd spend more time at home. And I got really close with my sister. I opened up to her for the first time and told her how scared I was that I was pregnant. Because I didn't know about responsibility. And I drank during my pregnancy. I smoked, because I'm selfish. And I didn't care about the other life inside of me. And it was a massive guilt and shame part in my step work. I don't tell everybody about it, but it's a meeting and it's my experience. And when she was born healthy. By the grace of God, this beautiful little girl came out, and she was perfect. But the moment she was out, I started plotting on, I need to start using and drinking, and so I jumped straight back into everything. We were living at my mother's house by then, because none of us had jobs, and I was living off my parents' money. And I'd finished my studies, but I don't know how I'd finished my studies. But I had no inclination of going out and looking for a job and trying to be a mom. So I took Chloe to bars with me. I took Chloe to, the one incident, I'd go out, when my ex went out drinking, I'd go out and I'd follow him. And I left Chloe in the car twice. And my car, by then I had a license. My car wouldn't lock, but I left her in the car. She was a baby, she was in her car seat strapped in. And the security guy said to me, "You cannot leave your baby there." And I said, "No, I'm just going up there quickly, I'll be back now." And I left her there. And she was okay, God looked after her. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and I ended up realizing that I need help. And I ended up in a treatment center, the same one, but in a different, for drugs and alcohol this time. It wasn't for depression. And they upped my medication, and there's this bell that they ring, and I'd run and line up for that medication every time, and I'd be like, "Oh, I really can't sleep. Please, can I have this?" And they'd give it to you, because I was telling the truth, which I wasn't. I could sleep, I just wanted to get high. I just wanted to feel different, should I say. And in that treatment center, I did go to meetings. There was meetings every night, and I got exposed to the steps, and I started realizing that there's something wrong with me. So after, I don't know if it's 28 days or 21 days was up, I said, I'm not going to survive out there. So my parents put me in a halfway house. And in that halfway house, I fixed off shopping. I went out, I was working by then. I'd been working for over a year in a hair salon. And I'd stolen money at every job I was at. I manipulated and changed things, and I thought I got away with it. And I didn't go back into work. Anyways, I ended up actually relapsing. Before I thought I really relapsed, because I was seeing a married man in the treatment center I was in. And I went and I relapsed 2 days after going out with him when he relapsed. And I had a sip of his mojito. And I did not see that as a relapse. I did not see me drinking that little bit of alcohol as a relapse, you know. But meanwhile, my behavior was off the wall. So the signs were there long ago. And someone was in there that went into the house on the hill. And God directed, I had two options, one in Cape Town and one in Durban. And I said, okay, well, Durban's closer than Cape Town, so let me go to Durban. And I ended up on the house on the hill. And I get described as this desperate housewife that walked into treatment. You know, and that was in 2010, September 2010. And I had no idea what I was in for. I'm grateful I went through it all now, but when I was there, it was like, oh my word. My first 4 steps were about my ex because I was still extremely obsessed about the relationship, and I needed to fix that relationship because he's Chloe's dad, you know. We need to be this happy little family in order for us to live and tra-la-la through life. That didn't happen because I got suggested to break up with him. And I did. I wrote a letter and I broke up with him, but I didn't let go. And it came out when I got special privileges before I'd done my step 5 to go out to a shaka because my daughter had come to visit with my parents. And the whole time I was there, I nagged my mom for a 2 rand coin so I could go to the tiki box and phone him. And, you know, that's my disease. I manipulate and find any which way just to get a little fix. And when I came back, I told my roommate, and she's like, you better bring that to concern in the morning, otherwise she will. And I was too poop scared to get concerned, so I brought it up. And so my journey started of my emotional rock bottom in treatment. And the steps are the best thing that could have ever happened, you know. I was in treatment for 4.5 months, and then my dad ended up relapsing. He was smoking weed and gambling before, but he ended up drinking. And my mom told me, and I'm like, she was going to send me to some Lani place in the Berg, and I was like, no, he can't go there. He needs to come here. And he ended up speaking to someone, and he ended up coming to treatment. So I had to move out. I couldn't be in treatment with my dad. So I decided to come to Scottsboro. And my first year was mad. I was mad. I really was. The suggestion of not being in a relationship in your first year was like, are you mad? How can you not be in a relationship with someone? So when I came out, I started speaking with Nev dishonestly, and my sponsor said to me, you know, Candice, you need to stop communication with him. And I'd be like, okay, but then I wouldn't put in the action until he was in the halfway house, and he was like, we need to stop communicating, and we were put on a combat. And I broke that combat a few times. I went through a lot of pain in my first year of rejection, and it helped me let go through seeing my part of the dishonesty and how selfish I was being for someone else's recovery. And we ended up, after me letting go, and I started my career I'm in now. I started studying, and I have this fear of highways, and God gave me a job in Lelusha, so I travel every day. And my parents helped me a lot in my first year. You know, I signed over custody of my daughter to my mom, and we got into a relationship. I was 11 months, and he was a year. But by then, you know, I don't want to say my recovery was okay, because I was still mad. Facebook reminds me every day of the stupid posts I used to put up. But we got into a relationship, and I started working at the salon I'm at today, I've been there for 5 years. It's the longest I've ever kept down a job. I haven't stole from my job. I've really put in a lot of action because I love what I do. I finished studying in recovery. I studied for 2 years, technically 3 years, but the first year, because I changed up to a new college, I had to start fresh. And I studied part-time, I worked, and I got Chloe back. And it was too overwhelming for me, So meetings got pushed aside. I was 18 months clean when Chloe came, and I was like, I can't handle this. So I started putting everything else before. And, it's amazing how God works, because my sponsor back then fired me, and it was, she was helping me, because it made me realize I got through a lot of pain, what I need to be putting first. So I did. I got a new sponsor. I slowly started picking up the pieces, and life was good. We were always fellowshipping. We got engaged, we got married. I've gone through massive stuff in my recovery, and I haven't been perfect along the way. I'm not a perfect person. I like to think I can be perfect, but that only lasts about 2 weeks. Like anything, I got balls to the walls 2 weeks, and it's like, yes, and then I'm like, I battled with complacency for years. I still do. But each experience got shorter and more painful and more easy for me to let go, because I kept trying to do the next right thing. The friends I've made along the way, it's been amazing, I've got real friends today, whereas I battled with women. I battled to go up to you and greet you and be like, hi. Or can we go for coffee? That was massive. That's massive for me. And walking through that fear because of my insecurities. And, today I've got a handful of really close female friends which have gotten me through so much. I've had a sponsor career sponsor me for 4.5 years. I don't know how. Because at one point she almost sent me back to treatment just before I got married, because I was mad. Everything was about the wedding, and I find anything to fix off. Where the only thing that works for me now is the program, and God. God is a massive part of my life today, because love counteracts fear. And in my second year, my sponsor taught me that. We were talking about it last night. She's like, just do everything you do with love. That's simple. Just replace fear with love. And when I started doing that in little parts of my life, the ball just keeps rolling. Love. God is love. These rooms is love. And this is where I found the real meaning of love. I remember in a group in treatment, Don used to say, you don't love your daughter. And I'm like, of course I love my daughter. I love my child. I didn't. My actions were telling the complete opposite. But my actions today, taking her to school every morning, bathing her, getting her, being there for her emotionally. This year has been one of the most beautiful years in recovery. I had my son. I've been there for my daughter. She's gone through a lot of emotional stuff at school, and I've been there for her. I've been present, trying to help her. Doing really well at work, which was my biggest fear, because when I went on maternity leave, I'm like, all my clients have left me, and I'm never going to make enough money. And I go back, and the other day I was actually complaining. I'm like, I'm tired, I don't want to be this busy. It's like mad. Yeah, but a big part of my recovery was my pregnancy. I got really close with one of my close friends today, and we went through, that's what I'd always wanted, someone to go through a big thing like that with them. You know, God gave me someone, and we went through pregnancy together and wedding. But my pregnancy was not easy. It was. I used to joke and tell friends last year about hormones, and how mad I am. I am insane. I'm an alcoholic addict, and I'm a woman. It's not a good combination to be pregnant, because it messes with everything in my head. And I had morning sickness the whole pregnancy. I got really big, which my insecurities and self-image was massive. But at the same time, it was beautiful because I was there. I was sober, I was clean, I was present, and I experienced this life inside of me. Big indirect amends to my daughters, I stopped smoking. And because it was a planned pregnancy, I knew I needed to stop smoking. And the fear around stopping smoking was massive. But my willingness was there, and God. Because He helped me. Because the moment I felt pregnant, I could not smoke. It was disgusting. It smelled disgusting. It tasted, it made me sick. And I stopped smoking during the pregnancy. And after he was born, it was a beautiful experience to go through birth of a child and having my daughter there at the same time. Expanding our family and being a mom and watching her go through. She went through massive immense amounts of jealousy, anger, so much towards us because she was only child, only cousin, only niece. She's like, my family's everything. So she's spoiled, rotten. And I really mean that. And she's always had the attention. For 8 years she's had this attention, and now this little being comes along, and she didn't handle it well. I had him over a week before Christmas. He was born in December, and it wasn't easy. It was not easy. I like to say I conceded defeat in hospital because I realized how selfish I was. He went through jaundice, and I had to go back into hospital, and I didn't want to go. And I came back. I think he was 2 weeks old, and I went to a meeting, and I was like, I'm selfish. I didn't want to go back into hospital because all my family's here. I want to be with my family. I mean, I went insane. Meanwhile, my son needed to be there so that they could help him. And I had a lot of God moments in the hospital. Spending a lot of time with myself while he was in the little cubicle. And realized how important life is. And life is recovery. That's the only way I've had a life is because of this program and because of God. And I came out, and I'm like, that's me. Straight back. Push it. And I have been. I've gone, this last week was mad. I had 2 incidences with crime. Had a beautiful weekend away with a friend that took me away. Invited me to her farm, and it was just at the right time because life in recovery is busy. And I can sit and I can complain about how hectic life is, but it's beautiful, I'm not at home sleeping my life away. I'm not at home missing out on anything, because I'm there, I'm present, and I'm putting in action to fellowship. I'm like putting a lot of action at work, and I love what I do today. I found my passion in recovery. I'm a hairdresser, and I love it. So when I go to work, it's not work. It's amazing, because I work with such an amazing team of people. And that's God. God has put these people in my life, and I've gone through a lot with them. I spend most of my time at work, and I get moments of ungratitude, which I had on Monday. And my head took me to like that, and I'm leaving. I don't want to be here anymore. Meanwhile, it's one of the biggest blessings that I have. I have a husband today that will call me out on my stuff. Okay, sometimes take my inventory, and I'm like, I want to throttle him, because you can't do that. It's not right. Meanwhile, I can sit and take his inventory easy. But that's okay, because I have a program, and I have a husband that actually really loves me. And we've gone through a lot. He's taken in Chloe as his own. Her father isn't in her life. Not by my choice. I still send him photos. I still put in the necessary action that I need to keep that door open, and not do what I want to do. Because if it was my decision, I'd be like, block you WhatsApp, like you're not seeing any photos of her, because you don't deserve to. That's where my head will take me. But I have to go against, and I still have to do those little things. And my children, having children is the most biggest way to be selfless, because it's hard work, and some days it's not easy. It's like constant, like I haven't slept in 3 nights. And I love my sleep. And then I have my daughter who cannot handle sugar. She's me. It's scary. I don't know who I was with the other day, but we said something at the same time, and it was like, I looked at her, I'm like, oh my God, I saw my life flash in front of me of my journey I'm going to have with my child. But it's okay, because if I was inactive, she wouldn't be exposed to the rooms. I bring her to meetings, because I don't take her to bars anymore. And some people have said to me in the past, how can you let her hear that stuff? It's who I am, and I can't hide anything from my child. I am aware of certain things I share about, but the program is in with how I live, and I try to teach her that. And if she does go on her journey, she'll go on her journey, and all I have is my experience, and I'll be an example through my actions. Here I am projecting. I don't know what's going to happen. An apocalypse could hit tomorrow, and but I hope I haven't left anything. I've spoken forever. It's amazing. Like, I get so scared to speak, and like massive pressure. I'm sharing today, and now it's like almost over, and I also can't shut up. But the gratitude that I have for this fellowship here is, it's grown so much over the past 6 years, and the fact that there are so many women is amazing, because as a woman myself, to be known as an alcoholic, it's like, ooh, she's an alcoholic. My perception of an alcoholic is a hobo on the side of the road that's falling over drunk. But it's not that. It's my behavior. It's my thinking. It's how I act out and I perceive things. I'm not like a normal person. And I don't mind. not being normal, because sometimes it's fun. But I love the fact that I feel a part of, because that's all I ever wanted, was to be part of. And today I can say that I feel part of, and I feel loved. People sending me messages, I'm sorry I can't be there for your share. Span, it's like, wow, my life has changed drastically. And it's all because of this simple program. And the simplicity is just love. You know, replacing fear with love. Yeah, thanks for letting me share.